First contact. In the shimmering depths of the Orion Arm, the Zephyrian Federation had flourished for eons. A peaceful alliance of a dozen starfaring species, the Zephyrians embodied the principles of harmony, wisdom, and unity. Their gleaming cities and vast, terraced gardens stood as testaments to millennia of tranquility and enlightenment. At the heart of the Federation lay the Grand Assembly, a towering edifice of shimmering crystal and flowing water. It was here that the Zephyrian Council, led by the esteemed High Counselor Zoran, convened to guide their civilization toward ever greater heights of knowledge and understanding. On a day like any other, as the twin suns of the Zephyrian homeworld cast their golden light across the Assembly's spires, an urgent message arrived from the Federation's outer sensors. An unidentified object, massive in scale and radiating an unfamiliar energy signature, had entered the fringes of Zephyrian space. High Counselor Zoran, his elongated head crowned with a circlet of woven light, called an emergency session of the Council. Representatives from each member species gathered in the Assembly's grand chamber, their faces a kaleidoscope of colors and forms, united in their concern over this unprecedented intrusion. Esteemed members of the Council, Zoran began, his melodic voice echoing through the chamber. We face an extraordinary situation. An unknown vessel, unlike any we have encountered, has crossed into our domain. We must proceed with wisdom and caution. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathered counselors. Taylor, the Zephyrian Master of Sciences, stepped forward, her iridescent scales shimmering under the chamber's soft light. High Counselor, our scans indicate that the object is a spacecraft of advanced design, powered by an exotic form of matter-antimatter reactor. Its trajectory suggests it originated from beyond the charted stars. Zoran nodded, his large, luminous eyes betraying a mix of curiosity and concern. This is indeed unprecedented. We must learn more about these visitors and their intentions. I propose we dispatch a first contact mission to investigate and establish peaceful dialogue. The Council debated the proposal, weighing the potential risks against the opportunity for discovery and diplomacy. In the end, they'd reached a consensus. A small, unarmed vessel would be sent to intercept the unknown craft, bearing a message of peace and an invitation to further contact. As the meeting adjourned and the counselors dispersed to make preparations, Zoran couldn't shake a feeling of unease. In all the ages of Zephyrian history, they had never encountered a species that had not already joined the harmonious chorus of the Federation. Who were these outsiders, and what might their arrival portend for the future of the Zephyrian people? Light years away, the SSE Magellan, pride of Earth's solar system exploration program, cruised through the void, its sleek, angular hull bristling with sensors and antennae. Within its reinforced bulkheads, a crew of 47 humans worked tirelessly to unravel the secrets of the cosmos. Captain Nora Sato, a veteran of countless interstellar missions, sat in her command chair on the bridge, eyes fixed on the main view screen. The screen displayed a dizzying array of stars and nebulae, each one a potential harbor for the unknown. "Captain, we're picking up an anomalous reading on long-range scanners," reported Lieutenant Shang, the ship's chief science officer. "It appears to be some sort of energy field, unlike anything in our databases." Nora leaned forward, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Interesting. Could it be a natural phenomenon, or something else entirely?" Xiang shook his head, his eyes wide with excitement. "Unknown, Captain. But whatever it is, it's huge. It's encompassing an entire star system." Nora felt a thrill run down her spine. This was what they had trained for, what they had crossed the countless light years to find. The promise of something new, something that could change the course of human history. She glanced around at her bridge crew, men and women from every corner of Earth, united in their thirst for discovery. They were the best of the best, each one a master of their craft, and she knew they would follow her to the ends of the universe if she asked. "Helm, set a course for the anomaly," she ordered, her voice steady with resolve. "Let's take a closer look and have the first contact protocols on standby. If there's someone out there, I want to be ready to say hello." As the Magellan banked toward the mysterious energy field, its engines thrumming with power, Nora couldn't help but wonder what lay ahead. In all the years of human space exploration, they had never encountered another sapient species. But now, on the threshold of the unknown, anything seemed possible. She smiled to herself, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing for certain. The universe would never be the same. Cultural exchange. As the Zephyrian first contact vessel glided through the void, its crystalline hull shimmering in the starlight, the crew prepared to meet the unknown. Amidst the ship's organic curves and flowing lines, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. Valen, the mission's lead diplomat, stood on the observation deck, his slender frame draped in a shimmering robe of woven light. His large, almond-shaped eyes gazed out at the stars, searching for a glimpse of the alien craft. "Ambassador Valen, we are approaching the coordinates of the unidentified vessel," reported Shalara, the ship's pilot. Her delicate, iridescent wings fluttered with excitement as she guided the ship through the void. Valen nodded, his long, elegant fingers interlaced in a gesture of contemplation. "Thank you, Shalara. Let us hope that our first contact brings a new era of understanding and cooperation." As the Zephyrian ship drew closer, the alien vessel came into view. Its angular, metallic hull stood in stark contrast to the smooth, organic lines of Zephyrian design. Valen marveled at the unfamiliar architecture, wondering what kind of beings could have created such a craft. "Initiating hailing frequencies," announced Taylor, the ship's communications officer. "Let us pray they are receptive to our message of peace." On the bridge of the SSE Magellan, Captain Nora Sato leaned forward in her chair, her eyes fixed on the view screen. The alien ship was unlike anything she had ever seen, a work of art as much as a feat of engineering. "Captain, we're being hailed," reported Lieutenant Shung, his fingers flying across the communications console. "It's a standard first contact package, but the language is completely unfamiliar." Nora nodded, her heart racing with excitement. "Run it through the universal translator, and let's see what we've got." Moments later, a melodic voice filled the bridge, speaking in slightly accented English. "Greetings, travelers from beyond the stars. We are the Zephyrian Federation, a peaceful alliance of worlds. We come in the spirit of friendship and understanding." Nora exchanged a glance with her first officer, Commander Mikhail Petrov. This was the moment they had trained for, the moment when humanity would take its first steps onto a larger cosmic stage. She took a deep breath and activated the comm system. "Greetings, Zephyrian Federation. I am Captain Nora Sato of the Solar System Exploration Vessel Magellan. On behalf of the people of Earth, I extend our warmest welcome and our hopes for a future of cooperation and discovery." As the two ships drifted side by side in the void, the human and Zephyrian crews prepared for the historic moment of first contact. Shuttlecraft were dispatched, carrying diplomats and scientists eager to learn about each other's worlds. In a specially prepared meeting room aboard the Magellan, Valen and Nora sat across from each other, a sense of wonder and trepidation hanging between them. For hours, they traded stories of their respective civilizations, the Zephyrians with their long history of peace and enlightenment, the humans with their tumultuous past of war and conflict. Valen listened with rapt attention as Nora recounted the story of Earth, the rise and fall of empires, the great wars that had nearly torn the planet apart, and the slow, painful process of rebuilding and unification. "Your people have known such suffering," Valen said softly, his eyes shimmering with empathy, "but also such resilience and determination. To have come so far, to have reached the stars after enduring such trials, it is truly remarkable." Nora smiled, feeling the strange kinship with this alien being who seemed to understand the complexities of the human experience. "We have made mistakes, it's true, but we have also learned from them. And now, as we stand on the brink of a new era, we are ready to take our place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as explorers and friends." As the two continued to talk, sharing stories and laughter, a bond began to form between them, a bond of mutual respect and understanding that would shape the future of both their worlds. And yet, even as they celebrated this historic moment, a sense of unease lurked at the edges of their consciousness. For somewhere out there, beyond the reach of their sensors, an ancient and terrible threat was stirring, a threat that would test the strength of their newfound alliance and the very fabric of the universe itself. Looming threat. Days turned into weeks as the Zephyrians and humans continued their cultural exchange, each side marveling at the wonders and achievements of the other. Aboard the Magellan, Zephyrian scientists worked alongside their human counterparts, sharing knowledge and technology in a spirit of cooperation and discovery. But even as the bonds between the two species grew stronger, a new threat loomed on the horizon. In the Zephyrian Command Center, alarms blared as long-range sensors detected an enormous fleet of unknown ships entering the outer reaches of the system. High Counselor Zoran stared at the holographic display, his face a mask of concern. The ships were unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever seen. Massive, angular, and bristling with weaponry. Their energy signatures were off the charts, dwarfing even the most advanced Zephyrian vessels. "Taylor, what do we know about these ships?" Zoran asked, his voice tight with anxiety. The Master of Sciences shook her head, her iridescent scales flickering with worry. "High Counselor, our databases have no record of this species, but based on their ship designs and energy outputs, they appear to be highly advanced and highly aggressive." Zoran's heart sank. The Zephyrians had not faced a military threat in living memory. Their ships were designed for exploration and diplomacy, not combat. If these unknown aliens were hostile, the Federation would be all but defenseless. He turned to Valen, who had been summoned from the Magellan at the first sign of trouble. "Ambassador, we need to know more about these intruders. Can we establish communication? Find out their intentions?" Valen nodded, his long fingers already dancing across the communications console. "I will do my best, High Counselor. But we must also prepare for the worst. If they are hostile, we will need all the help we can get." As Valen worked to hail the unknown ships, Zoran's thoughts turned to the humans. In their short time together, he had come to respect and admire the Magellan crew. Their bravery, their resourcefulness, their unshakable determination. If anyone could help the Zephyrians in their hour of need, it was them. On the bridge of the Magellan, Captain Norisado listened with growing alarm as Zoran explained the situation. The unknown ships had ignored all hails and were continuing to advance, their weapon systems charging with ominous energy. "High Counselor, we stand ready to assist in any way we can," Nora said, her voice steady with resolve. "The Magellan may be an exploration vessel, but we're equipped with the latest in human military technology. If it comes to a fight, we'll be right there beside you." Zoran bowed his head in gratitude, his eyes shimmering with emotion. "Thank you, Captain Sado. Your offer of aid means more than you can know. But I fear that even with your help, we may be facing an enemy beyond our combined strength." As if on cue, Taylor's console lit up with a flurry of new data. Her eyes widened in shock as she read the analysis. "High Counselor, we've identified the unknown ships. They match the profile of the Corthan Dominion, a species known for its ruthless conquests and disregard for all other forms of life." A chill ran through the command center at the mention of the Corthans. Even the Zephyrians, with their limited knowledge of galactic politics, had heard whispers of their cruelty and their insatiable hunger for power. Zoran exchanged a grim look with Nora, the weight of the moment hanging heavy between them. They both knew what they were up against, an enemy that would stop at nothing to crush all who stood in its way. But as they looked out at the stars, at the countless worlds and species that called this galaxy home, they knew they had no choice but to stand and fight. For the sake of the Zephyrian Federation, for the sake of all life in the universe, they would face this threat head-on, and they would do it together. Preparation for battle. As the Corthan fleet drew ever closer, The Zephyrians and humans worked tirelessly to prepare for the coming storm. In the great shipyards of the Zephyrian homeworld, teams of engineers and technicians labored around the clock, retrofitting the Federation's peaceful exploration vessels with the latest in human weapons technology. Captain Norisato stood on the observation deck of the newly christened ZFS Unity, a symbol of the alliance between the two species. The ship was a marvel of hybrid engineering, its sleek Zephyrian hull now bristling with human-designed pulse cannons and quantum torpedoes. At her side stood Valen, his face lined with worry as he watched the frenzied activity below. "I never thought I would see the day when our ships would be armed for war," he said softly, his voice heavy with sorrow. "The Zephyrian way has always been one of peace and understanding." Nora placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, feeling the weight of his burden as if it were her own. "I know this goes against everything your people stand for," she said, her eyes meeting his with a fierce intensity. "But sometimes, to protect the peace, we must be ready to fight for it. And with the Corthans bearing down on us, we have no choice but to stand and defend what we believe in." Valen nodded, his resolve hardening as he gazed out at the stars. "You are right, Captain Sato. The Zephyrian Federation has stood for centuries as a beacon of hope and unity in the galaxy. We cannot let that light be extinguished by the Corthans' cruel ambition." As the two leaders stood in contemplation, a chime sounded from Nora's communicator. She tapped the device, and a holographic image of Admiral Elena Ivanova, commander of Earth's Third Fleet, sprang to life before them. "Captain Sato, I bring good news," the Admiral said, her face etched with determination. "The reinforcements you requested have arrived. The Third Fleet stands ready to join you in defense of the Zephyrian Federation." Nora felt a surge of pride and relief at the Admiral's words. She had known that Earth would not stand idly by while their new allies faced annihilation, but to see the full might of human military power arrayed in their defense was a humbling sight. "Thank you, Admiral," Nora said, her voice ringing with gratitude. "Your support means more than you can know. With your ships at our side, I believe we have a fighting chance against the Corthans." As the hologram winked out, Nora turned to Valen, a fierce grin spreading across her face. "Well, Ambassador, it looks like the cavalry has arrived. What do you say we show these Corthans what happens when they mess with the Zephyrian human alliance?" Valen returned her smile, his eyes glinting with a newfound resolve. "Indeed, Captain Sato. Let us show them the true strength of unity and cooperation." As the two leaders strode from the observation deck, the combined fleets of Earth and the Zephyrian Federation moved into formation, their ships glinting in the starlight like a vast and terrible armada. The Corthans may have had numbers and brute strength on their side, but they had reckoned without the power of two species united in common cause. And as the first shots of the battle rang out across the void, every soul in that great fleet knew that they were fighting not just for their own survival, but for the future of the entire galaxy. Against the darkness of the Corthans' tyranny, they would stand as a beacon of light, a shining example of what could be achieved when different species put aside their differences and worked towards a common goal. It would be a battle for the ages, a struggle that would echo through the annals of history for generations to come. But whatever the outcome, one thing was certain. The Zephyrians and humans would face it together, bound by the unbreakable bonds of friendship and mutual respect. The Corthan assault. The Corthan fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of angry locusts, their ships blotting out the stars with their sheer numbers. At the center of the formation, the Corthan flagship loomed like a monstrous predator, its hull encrusted with the scars of countless battles. On the bridge of the ZFS Unity, Captain Norisato gripped the arms of her command chair, her knuckles white with tension. Beside her, Valen stood resolute, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen as if he could will the enemy away through sheer force of will. "This is it," Nora said, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. "All hands, battle stations. Prepare to engage the enemy on my command." Across the Zephyrian system, the combined fleets of Earth and the Zephyrian Federation moved into position, their ships forming a vast defensive perimeter around the Zephyrian homeworld. The upgraded defenses hummed with power, ready to unleash a storm of fire and fury upon the invaders. With a roar that shook the very fabric of space, the Corthan fleet opened fire, their weapons tearing through the void with devastating precision. The Zephyrian ships shuddered under the onslaught, their shields flaring with brilliant bursts of energy as they struggled to hold back the tide. But the humans were ready. With a synchronized barrage of their own, the Earth ships unleashed a torrent of firepower, their advanced weapons cutting through the Corthan ranks like a scythe through wheat. Pulse cannons and quantum torpedoes lit up the darkness, sowing chaos and destruction among the enemy fleet. The battle raged on for hours, both sides taking heavy losses as they clashed in the cold embrace of space. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their crews consumed by the merciless vacuum. But still, the Corthans kept coming, their numbers seemingly endless. As the tide of battle began to turn against the defenders, Nora knew that they needed a new strategy. With a determined set to her jaw, she turned to Valen, a glint of inspiration in her eyes. "Ambassador, I have an idea," she said, her voice barely audible above the din of the battle. "If we can get a small strike team onto the Corthan flagship, we might be able to take out their command structure and throw their fleet into disarray." Valen nodded, his face grim but determined. "It's a risky plan, Captain Sato, but it may be our only chance. I volunteer to lead the Zephyrian contingent of the strike team." Nora clasped his hand, feeling the weight of the moment hanging between them. "Then I'll lead the human team. Together, we'll show these Corthans what happens when they mess with our alliance." With a final nod of understanding, the two leaders gathered their strike teams and prepared to embark on the most dangerous mission of their lives. Using the chaos of the battle as cover, they slipped aboard a small, stealthy shuttle and set course for the Corthan flagship. As they approached the massive vessel, dodging volleys of enemy fire and weaving through the debris of shattered ships, Nora couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the sheer scale of the challenge before them. The Corthan ship dwarfed even the largest of the Zephyrian vessels, its hull bristling with weapons and sensor arrays. But she knew that they had no choice but to succeed. The fate of two species, and perhaps the entire galaxy, rested on their shoulders. With a final, determined breath, she signaled her team to begin their infiltration. They were about to strike at the very heart of the Corthan war machine, and may the stars have mercy on them all. Sacrifice and triumph. The strike team moved silently through the corridors of the Corthan flagship, their weapons at the ready, their senses heightened to the slightest sound or movement. Nora and Valen led the way, their faces etched with grim determination as they navigated the labyrinthine passages of the enemy vessel. As they approached the ship's central control room, they encountered fierce resistance from the Corthan defenders. Blaster fire filled the air, the acrid smell of ozone mingling with the coppery tang of blood. The strike team fought with desperate courage, pushing forward inch by hard-won inch. Finally, they broke through the last line of defense and burst into the control room, weapons blazing. The Corthan commanders fell before their onslaught, their lifeless bodies slumping to the deck. But even as the strike team moved to secure the room, a final desperate act of defiance changed the course of the battle forever. A mortally wounded Corthan officer, his face twisted with hatred and fanaticism, lunged for the ship's self-destruct mechanism. In that frozen moment of terror and realization, Lieutenant Kira Sato, Nora's younger sister and second in command of the human contingent, threw herself forward in a desperate attempt to stop him. The explosion ripped through the control room, consuming Kira and the Corthan officer in a blinding flash of light. Nora screamed in anguish, her heart shattered by the sight of her sister's sacrifice. But even in her grief, she knew that Kira's actions had bought them the time they needed. With tears streaming down her face, Nora set to work on the ship's systems, her fingers flying over the unfamiliar controls. Beside her, Valen and the surviving members of the strike team worked to sabotage the Corthan fleet from within, disabling weapons, disrupting communications and sowing chaos throughout the enemy ranks. In the void of space, the tide of battle began to turn. The Zephyrian human fleet, bolstered by the sudden disarray among the Corthans, pressed their advantage. The Unity and her sister ships unleashed a storm of fire upon the enemy, their weapons tearing through the weakened Corthan defenses like a hot knife through butter. Faced with the sudden reversal of fortune and the loss of their flagship, the Corthan fleet began to falter. One by one, their ships fell before the renewed onslaught of the defenders, their hulls shattered and their crews consumed by the merciless vacuum of space. In the end, it was too much for even the mighty Corthan war machine to bear. With their command structure in ruins and their fleet on the brink of annihilation, the Corthans had no choice but to retreat. Their ships limped away from the battlefield, trailing debris and leaking atmosphere, their dreams of conquest shattered beyond repair. On the bridge of the Unity, Nora and Valen watched the Corthan retreat with a mixture of relief and sorrow. They had won the day, but the cost had been high. The Zephyrian fleet lay in ruins, their peaceful ships battered and broken by the brutal realities of war. And the human contingent had suffered losses of their own, with brave soldiers like Kurosado laying down their lives in defense of their newfound allies. As the two leaders stood side by side, the weight of the moment hanging heavy upon them, Nora felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Valen, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears, his face a mask of gratitude and respect. "Your people have given us a gift beyond measure," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "The sacrifice of Lieutenant Sado and the bravery of your soldiers have saved the Zephyrian Federation from annihilation. We will never forget what you have done for us." Nora nodded, her own tears flowing freely now. "And we will never forget the courage and resilience of the Zephyrian people," she replied, her voice fierce with conviction. "In the face of impossible odds, you stood tall and fought for your freedom. That is a lesson that humanity will carry with us always." As the two leaders embraced, the shattered remnants of their fleets moving to secure the system and begin the long process of rebuilding, they knew that the galaxy had been forever changed by the events of the past few days. The old certainties of the past had been swept away, replaced by a new and fragile alliance forged in the crucible of war. And though the road ahead would be long and hard, Nora and Valen knew that they would walk it together, side by side, bound by the unbreakable bonds of shared sacrifice and common purpose. For in the end, it was not the might of their weapons or the strength of their ships that had carried the day, but the indomitable spirit of two species united in defense of their shared values. Against the darkness of the Corthan threat, they had stood as a beacon of light, a shining example of what could be achieved when different peoples put aside their differences and worked towards a common goal. And in that moment of triumph and sorrow, they knew that the future of the galaxy would be shaped by the choices they made in the days to come. A new alliance. In the weeks and months following the Corthan invasion, the Zephyrian Federation struggled to come to terms with the new realities of their universe. For centuries, they had lived in a state of perfect peace, their society built on the principles of diplomacy, cooperation, and nonviolence. But now, in the wake of a war that had shaken the very foundations of their civilization, they found themselves questioning everything they had once held dear. In the great halls of the Zephyrian Council, debates raged long into the night. Some argued that the invasion had been a wake-up call, a stark reminder that the universe was not always a friendly place. They called for a new era of military preparedness, a Zephyrian fleet that could stand against any threat. Others, however, clung to the ideals of peace and nonviolence that had guided their society for so long. They argued that to abandon those principles now would be to let the Corthans win, to surrender the very essence of what made the Zephyrian Federation unique and special. Amidst this tumult, Ambassador Valen emerged as a voice of reason and moderation. Drawing on his experiences during the war and his close friendship with Captain Norasado, he argued for a middle path, a Zephyrian fleet that would serve as a shield, not a sword. "We have seen the horror and destruction that war can bring," he said, his voice ringing out across the council chambers. "But we have also seen the power of cooperation and friendship. In our darkest hour, it was the humans who stood by our side, who fought and died to defend our freedom. We cannot turn our backs on that sacrifice, or on the lessons it has taught us." Slowly, painfully, the Zephyrian Federation began to change. A new fleet was born, its ships sleek and powerful, designed for defense and peacekeeping rather than conquest. Zephyrian soldiers trained alongside their human counterparts, learning the ways of war so that they might better preserve the peace. And at the heart of it all, a new alliance was forged, a partnership between the Zephyrian Federation and the Earth Alliance, built on the foundation of shared values and common purpose. Together, the two powers set out to explore the stars, to seek out new life and new civilizations, and to promote the cause of peace and cooperation wherever they went. For Nora, Sato, and Valen, the bonds forged in the crucible of war only grew stronger with time. They became the living embodiment of the alliance between their two peoples, a symbol of what could be achieved when different cultures worked together towards a common goal. As the years passed, the scars of the Korthan War began to fade, but the lessons learned from that terrible conflict remained. The Zephyrian Federation had been forever changed, its people awakened to the harsh realities of the universe beyond their borders. But they had also discovered a new strength within themselves, a resilience and determination that would guide them through whatever challenges lay ahead. And though the road ahead was long and uncertain, Nora and Valen knew that they would face it together, side by side, bound by the unbreakable bonds of friendship and love. For in each other, they had found a new kind of home, a place of warmth and comfort amidst the cold vastness of space. As they stood on the bridge of the Unity, watching the stars drift by outside the viewports, Nora felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over her. The universe was a vast and wondrous place, full of dangers and challenges at every turn. But with Valen by her side, and the strength of their two peoples united behind them, she knew that there was nothing they could not achieve. The Zephyrian-human alliance had been forged in the fires of war, tempered by shared sacrifice and common purpose. And now, as they set out to explore the infinite possibilities of the cosmos, they carried with them the hopes and dreams of two species, bound together by the unbreakable bonds of friendship and trust. It was a new dawn for the galaxy, a future bright with promise and possibility. And Nora and Valen knew that they would face it together, always ready to defend the peace they had fought so hard to achieve.